Alright, in section 5 of chapter 4, we're going to be looking at equations and deciding whether or not they're parallel or perpendicular. With parallel lines, there's one thing that we should definitely talk about here, and that would be that if lines are parallel, they're going to have the same slopes. So parallel lines have equal slopes. And if we're looking at equations that are in slope-intercept form, where we have y equals mx plus b, just remember that whatever is in the m position is the slope, and whatever is in the b position is the y-intercept. We want to focus on what number is in the position of the slope. So let's say we've got two equations, one of them being y equals negative 1/2 x plus 2, and let's say the other one's y equals negative 1/2 x minus 10. If we look at those two equations, just by the slope, we can determine whether or not the lines are parallel. So if we look at the first one here, the slope of that one is negative 1/2. And if we look at the second equation, the slope of that one is also negative 1/2. So negative 1/2 and negative 1/2 are the same and equal, so therefore those lines, if you graph them, would be parallel. Alright, here in this first example, we're asked to write an equation of the line that passes through the point negative 2, 11, and is parallel to the equation y equals negative x plus 5. Well, if we look at the equation y equals negative x plus 5, the slope is going to be negative 1. And so that means when we write the equation of the line that's parallel to that, it's going to have the same slope of negative 1. But we want to go through the point negative 2, 11. So if we go back to this point, this is going to be an x value, negative 2, and the 11 is going to be a y value. So if we were to use the y equals mx plus b slope-intercept form, plug some stuff in that we know. Well, if we're going to say y is 11, I'm going to plug 11 in here. Slope's negative 1. The x is going to be negative 2. And we don't know the b yet. Well, b is the only unknown, or the y-intercept is the only unknown, so let's go ahead and simplify this so we get b by itself. Well, 11's on the left. Negative 1 times negative 2 is a positive 2. And we still have our b. If we were to subtract 2 on both sides, we find out that the b, or the y-intercept, is going to be 9. So if we wrote our equation, we've got y equals negative 1x, because that's the slope, has to be the same, so the slope needs to be negative 1, and our y-intercept, or b value, is 9. So the equation of the line that passes through the point negative 2, 11 and is parallel to y equals negative x plus 5 is circled here in green, y equals negative 1x plus 9. Alright, so now if we're looking at perpendicular lines are lines that intersect, and when they intersect they form right angles, or 90 degrees. And if you're looking at just the equation, you want to look at the product. So if you were to multiply the two slopes together and it gives you negative 1, then the lines are going to be perpendicular. So the product of the slopes is negative 1. So if we had two equations, let's say we had y equals negative 1/4 x plus 2, and say we had y equals 4x minus 3. Look at their slopes. We've got negative 1/4. We want to multiply it by the other one, 4, and if we wrote that as a fraction, 4 and 4 over 1 is the same thing. We just multiply straight across. Negative 1 times 4, and for the numerator is 4. The denominator, 4 times 1, is 4. And when you simplify negative 4 divided by 4, you get negative 1. So if that's the case, when you take the two slopes, multiply them together, and get negative 1 as a result, the lines are going to be perpendicular. Alright, so in this example here, we want to write an equation of a line that passes through the point 1, negative 1, and is perpendicular to the line y equals 3x plus 2. Well, as we just looked at and talked about, that if you take the slopes of the two equations and multiply them together and get negative 1, the line's going to be perpendicular. So if we look at the slope of this line, we got 3. So we want to know, what do you multiply 3 by? So 3 times some number is going to give you negative 1. It's just basically the reciprocal and the negative of it. So if we did 3 times negative 1/3, we're going to get negative 1. So we want to use this for the slope. So if we use y equals mx plus b, we're going to plug in that negative 1/3 for the slope. They give us this point here again, 1, negative 1, so 1's going to be the x, negative 1 is going to be the y. So I'm going to plug those in, so y is negative 1, x is positive 1. We don't know the b yet. Well, negative 1 times, or negative 1/3 times 1 is negative 1/3. And if we add 1/3 to both sides to get b by itself, we get negative 2/3 on the left, which is our y-intercept. So if we're going to write this equation, we get y equals negative 1/3 x minus 2/3. That equation will be parallel, or I'm sorry, will be perpendicular to the equation y equals 3x plus 2. Alright, so here we were given two equations. We want to determine whether or not the lines are parallel or perpendicular. So we're going to look at the slopes. If the slopes are the same, then they are going to be parallel. If you multiply the slopes together and you get negative 1, then they're going to be perpendicular. Well, let's first rearrange these so that they are in slope-intercept form. So if we look at this equation here on the left, you want to get y by itself. So first going to subtract 2x from both sides. Then we get 6y equals negative 2x plus 12. Still need to get the y by itself, going to divide by 6. We're going to divide everything by 6, so I'm going to divide both of those things on the right by 6. We get y equals negative 1/3 after you simplify it, x, plus 2. Okay, so that's the one equation. Now let's do the other one here. And we just need to divide both sides by negative 4. So I'm going to divide everything by negative 4. And on the left we get y equals, on the right we get 3x minus 2. So we want to take a look at the two slopes now and determine what we can do here. So, well, as you can see, the one slope here, negative 1/3, and the other one there is 3. Well, they're not equal, so they're not parallel. But if you were to multiply negative 1/3 times 3, remember 3 over 1 is the same thing as 3, we get a negative 3 over 3, which simplifies to negative 1. So these lines are going to be perpendicular.